in my second year PhD studies at Wits University in South Africa. My research project is titled The Chromite and Sulphide Mineralization of mafic and ultramafic bodies of the Uitloop farm in the northern limb of the Bushveld Complex. The stratigraphy of the northern limb is different from the rest of the Bushveld Complex. One of the main differences being that the lower zone in the northern limb also occurs as thick channelite-like bodies that discordantly intruded through the transverse sedimentary rocks as well as the alkene granite gneisses. This project is based on the Uitloop farm, which hosts the lower zone intrusion, which is exposed as two separate bodies which lie along the eastern periphery of the northern limb. At the moment, the nickel sulphide mineralization in the lower zone ultramafic rocks, as well as the PGE, copper and nickel mineralization in the critical zone lithologies on Uitloop 2 subbody, are targets of the ongoing exploration project by Lesotho Platinum Uitloop, and this project is known as the Zebediela project. The aims of my PhD study are to establish the magmatic stratigraphy of the Uitloop area based on rock geochemistry as well as chromite and olivine signatures. Another aim is to assess the PGE, nickel, and copper exploration potential of the different intrusions of provisional lower zone plat reef and critical zone affinity. The lower zone sequences on Uitloop consist of mainly serpentinized poikilotic hasbogites, serpentinized danite, as well as olivine orthopyroxenites. These ultramafic rocks are commonly interlayered with assimilated zones, which we labeled as parapyroxenites. And then the plat reef lithologies on Uitloop consist of mainly feldspatic pyroxenite and feldspatic hasbogite with minor noritic and gabbroic units, as well as hybrid rocks. These magmatic intrusions on the Uitloop truncated the Malmani subgroup, as well as the Penge and Deutschland formations of the Transvaal supergroup. The relationship between the plat reef and the lower zone satellite bodies on the Uitloop farm isn't clear because of the complex interfingering of unexposed contact and composite structure of the plat reef that itself consists of ultramafic intrusions. As a result, amongst other techniques, we used whole rock geochemistry as well as chromite and olivine chemistry to distinguish between the lower zone and plat reef sequences on Uitloop farm. Samples were taken from boreholes Z19 and Z20, which are located on the southeastern periphery of the Uitloop 2 body. Chromite seams are the most useful markers for stratigraphic correlation. Therefore, comprehensive studies of the chemistry of Uitloop chromite would allow for stratigraphic correlation of the Rustenburg layered suit on Uitloop farm with the main plat reef body, as well as other lower zone offshoot intrusions further north in the northern limb. The chromites in borehole Z19 and Z20 are hosted by feldspatic pyroxenite and feldspatic hasbogite lithologies as dense disseminations, as well as continuous and disturbed chromatite seams. The Uitloop chromite distribution patterns and the morphology resemble those of the upper chromatite in the main plat reef. The chromite crystals vary in size and commonly occur as either interstitial or intrusions in silicate minerals such as pyroxene and olivine, as well as phlogopites. These chromites also occur in close proximity to minerals such as apatite, quartz, and zircon. The chromite crystals mainly have euhedral, subhedral, as well as rounded morphologies. These chromites tend to anneal when in contact with one another, as shown here in figure A. Also, the chromite crystals, which have retained their primary morphologies, generally lack intrusions. However, as we can see in figure B, some of the euhedral chromatite grains have needle-like rutile intrusions, as seen here in figure B. We also observed some fish hooks within the anhedral interstitial chromites. Also, these interstitial chromites tend to be replaced or corroded by phlogopite along the edges, which results in these relics which have irregular boundaries as seen here in figures B, C, as well as E. The development of these post-cumulus growth textures are a result of chromite equilibration as well as dissolution. The compositions of chromites were determined using electron microprobe analysis at the University of Johannesburg. And we observed that the feldspathic pyroxenite hosted, the feldspathic pyroxenite hosted chromites have higher chrome content and lower magnesium oxide in comparison to the chromites which are hosted by feldspathic Hasbogate lithologies. These chromites from Uitloop show a general trend of increasing chromium numbers with decreasing magnesium numbers. And this trend is consistent with trend A, which was described by Naldred and co-authors in 2012. We then compared the compositions of the Uitloop chromites with those of other parts of the Bushveld, such as Gys Valley chromites. And we observed that the Uitloop chromites generally have lower magnesium numbers with higher chromium numbers in comparison to the Gys Valley chromites. However, the Hasbogate hosted chromites have lower magnesium numbers with somewhat similar chromite numbers to the Gys Valley lower zone chromites. We also compared these chromites to Marinsky Reef and UGT chromites, which we used as representatives for the critical zone chromites. And we observed that the Uitloop chromites have lower magnesium numbers and higher chromium numbers in comparison to the critical zone chromites. The Uitloop chromite composition closely matched the compositions of Platte Reef chromites because they both are characterized by high variability in their chemical compositions. This variability is because of the chromite phenocrysts underwent significant re-equilibration due to ion exchange with the intercumulus liquid as well as host silicates. Majority of the olivine-bearing rocks from the Uitloop farm are highly serpentinized. However, one feldspathic Hasbogate sample contained relatively fresh olivine crystals. The composition of these olivines were also determined using an electron microprobe analysis. We observed that similar to the chromites, the olivine crystals also show features or rather textures of subsolidus transformation, such as these orientated lamellars of cyanopyroxene and chromite. As a result, we cannot expect that olivine will maintain its primary liquidous composition. The compositions of the olivine from Uitloop are compared to the lower zone olivines from Gys Valley as well as from the Platte Reef and the Marinsky Reef. And we observe that the Uitloop olivines generally have compositions that overlap with lower zone and the Platte Reef olivines at the neighboring Tofspruit and Sandsloot farms. Also, the relatively high phosphorate content of olivine, as well as the elevated nickel in the olivines from Uitloop suggests that the samples, the sample from the feldspathic Hasbogate layer could provisionally be correlated with the Hasbogitic reefs at the top of the Platte Reef on Tofspruit. The chromium magnesium oxide ratios have been used to distinguish between the critical zone and the main zone in the eastern and western limb. The critical zone generally has ratios that range between 80 and 120, while the main zone lithologies have ratios that range between 40 and 60. Although some of the Uitloop samples appear to have ratios that are less than 80, majority of these mafic and ultramafic rocks are of critical zone affinity. Over the past few years, Lesotho Platinum has drilled a number of boreholes on the Uitloop 2 body. So far, I've been able to log and sample about 12 boreholes. And at this stage, we have a provisional interpretation of interrelationship between the lower zone and the Platreef lithologies on the Uitloop farm. And the Platreef on Uitloop farm is mostly sandwiched between the Deutschland metasedimentary rocks, as seen here in boreholes Z19, Z20, as well as Z23. However, in some boreholes such as Z26 and Z3, we observed Platreef lithologies between lower zone sequences. The lithological sequences are quite simple in some of the boreholes, while others are more complex, such as in Z17 and Z28. Although I didn't show in these simplified stratigraphic columns, we observed multiple thin intervals of paraperoxenite within the lower zone, as well as the Platreef sequences. The irregular intercalation of mafic and ultramafic lithologies in the Uitloop area could provisionally be explained by out-of-sequence cell-like emplacement, such as what was described in the first presentation by Samir. This, however, requires further investigation, which we are currently working on in collaboration with the geologists from Lesotho Platinum Uitloop. Based on the data that we have collected so far, we concluded that the magmatic sequences on the Uitloop farm represent a Platreef offshoot that was formed by multiple injections or via coalescence of several cells of critical zone and Platreef affinity and placed into the metasedimentary rocks of the Transvaal supergroup. This project is quite exciting, and the Uitloop area may potentially host one of the biggest nickel and platinum deposits. And we are very grateful that Lesotho Platinum has allowed us to take part in this study. This is all I've prepared for everyone. Thank you.